See, my computer says 10:02, my watch says 25 seconds till. It's
My
crazy.
phone says 9:59.
And that's what but mine says 10:02.
Really?
What's
Mine's 9:59 on mine.
End up like Charles.
Well, I'm always ahead. Or usually the tail, I don't know.
It won't be 10 for a second.
Yeah.
Okay, we're live.
Do you want to move over here? Zach's not coming.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Village of Ruidoso special meeting. It is July 29th, 2021. It's 10 a.m. or right at 10 a.m. If you'll join me for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
All right, thank you, everybody. We'll have roll call, please, Mr. Rosanna.
Mayor Crawford.
Here.
Councillor Salas.
Here.
Councillor Letterman.
Here.
Councillor Eby. Here. Councillor Cornelius.
Here.
Councillor Coughlin.
Here.
Councillor Jackson.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, appreciate it. First item on the agenda is the ratification of letter of request for emergency watershed protection funding assistance through the Natural Resource Conservation. And this one goes to, I thought this was Mr. Boyda, but he's not here.
Mayor and council, this is a letter that we recommended to the mayor to sign off on to get the process started. This letter doesn't bind us to anything other than getting NRCS to come in and start an assessment of the impact to the river and the banks of the river, due to the last storm. We have signed off on this, and the team has already started to mobilize as of today to start getting out and assessing the damage to the banks of the river. And they're not going to be looking, this doesn't get into public infrastructure, the bridges, the water shoreline infrastructure is a separate deal. Back in '08 and going into '09, with the previous storm, NRCS did come through and they fixed some of the Gavian baskets and things of that nature with a similar program. And riprap structures that stabilize the river that they also participated with back then. So if the village does want to move forward, they will bring the assessment and give us recommendations of where on the river that they're going to propose projects to either redo the projects that were damaged previously from the previous project or new projects to work in the watershed and the river banks.
And it'll still be 75-25?
Yeah, it's a 75-25, and oftentimes these projects are constructed on private properties. Mm-hmm. And we would be entering into agreements separately with each property owner being part of that project participation.
Okay, so they would be responsible for anything financially?
When we get into it, Mayor, we'll have the agreements, the previous agreements. There is a certain level of responsibility for the homeowner, and then some of them we even had in perpetuity responsible for the village.
Right, and that's the scary part of it.
Yeah, for maintenance and operations.
Well, I just know it's peculiar because some of these folks that have claimed ownership on both sides of the river are now saying the river's actually the village's and you need to fix this. So we just want to make sure we understand that, and it sounds like it's going to be a complicated process. So are they going to be reaching out to the property owners, or at this time are they just going to be assessing it and then they're handing it to us?
They're going to be assessing it, and they're going to be in communication with the property owners as well.
Okay, that's what I
We
understood.
have sent out some correspondence that there are going to be NRCS people, village people, and high water mark people doing assessments up and down the river.
Okay,
Mayor,
yes, sir.
we'll have to have easements on all those properties to get in there and do the work. We need to make sure they're permanent if we're responsible for maintenance.
Yeah.
As Eric Boyda was telling me that we didn't do that on some of this stuff
2008.
on this, on
And I
the
don't
sewer
know-
project, and that could cause a problem, so we need to be careful on it this time.
What do you mean permanent?
So we
So
can-
we can go back
And
to
fix
do
them.
So
maintenance.
permanent easements,
If
not
we're
just for,
responsible, we've got to get in there.
yeah.
Because I don't even know, I mean, were you on the council in '08? I hadn't got on yet. I was on lodger's tax. I don't recall being made aware, Joe, do you, when we got on there, that we were responsible for the repairs that had been done, all that riprap and that concrete, what do you call it? Where they spray the concrete on?
Gunite.
Gunite.
Concrete.
That we were responsible for that. So yes, I agree with that. We need to make sure that we do have permanent easements.
As we move through the assessment process, Mayor, we'll keep everybody fully informed, and any agreements, will be brought forth, and we'll evaluate that and make recommendations.
Okay.
Mayor, can I have, Tim, what about is this going to be for like all the logs and boulders in the river? People are asking about how are we going to get that out? Do they do anything like that?
Potentially.
Okay.
I guess they involve the Army Corps.
Yes.
And this NRCS is with USDA, and they're doing stuff in the valley too. And then there's another agency working in the valley. I met a guy down there too. And then the USDA, I didn't bring his card. The USDA number 3 out of Washington was in town this last weekend. And so I've got all his contact information. He was in Albuquerque, and he said he's going to be spending a lot of time here. So, all right, can someone proffer a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve ratification of letter of request for emergency watershed protection funding assistance through the Natural Resource Conservation Service, AKA NRCS.
Second.
Okay, any final discussion? Roll call, please, Ron.
Counselor Jackson,
Aye.
Counselor Cornelius,
Aye.
Counselor Coughlin,
Aye.
Counselor Salas,
Aye.
Counselor Lutterman,
Aye.
Counselor Eby.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, folks. Item number 2 is discussion and possible action on adoption of Resolution 2021-35, a resolution amending the fiscal year 2021 budget, quarter ending June 30th, 2021, for certain funds and application to the Local Government Division, LGD, of the New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration, DFA, for the approval thereof. Mrs. Starkovich.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. In front of you is our final budget adjustment for fiscal year 2021. This will encompass all budget adjustments, increases, and decreases from April 1st to June 30th. And the total amount of the budget increase was $3,526,734. On the agenda memo, you can see the impact to each fund listed out, but for our purposes this morning, we're going to focus on the resolution report. You've seen this one before. It's the Department of Finance schedule of budget adjustments where we'll identify what made up those figures individually by detail. So if everybody's there, we'll go ahead and start. On the general fund, we did, as you know, fiscal year 21, we had budgeted a lot of the revenues. We were still in the middle of COVID, so we had budgeted revenues low. Well, when we got through the fiscal year, we noticed that a lot of the revenues exceeded our budgeted amounts. So as that happened, we were able to add additional expenditures into the budget. So you'll see on this whole budget adjustment that will be the scenario for a lot of the different funds. where actual revenues exceeded budget, so we increased revenues, therefore also increasing corresponding expenditures. But in the general fund, in particular, we did increase some tax revenues in order to offset some of our capital projects that we had passed through, and we'll talk about them as we get through the budget adjustment. So we had actually increased the revenues in the general fund by $308,000. We did get additional funding on the Keep New Mexico Beautiful grant. We increased that revenue by $5,280. And then the fire department actually got a RMP reimbursement in the amount of $3,475. Now, that grant will be split up between wages and equipment, and you'll see corresponding expenditure increases in not only the general fund, but out to the SURF, because Chief Thetford has been taking this money, anything that's corresponding to the equipment rental, he has been saving it in his SURF in order to outfit some trucks and repair equipment and stuff. So the general fund transfers in actually increased $280,000, and that's because our enterprise revenues were over budget, and therefore the administrative fee to the general fund also increased. Most of the enterprise funds pay a 10% admin fee to the general fund, with the exception of the airport, who pays 5%. Some of the expenditures that increased in the general fund, again, were the wages for the RMP reimbursement, which was $1,131. And then, of course, increased expenditures for Keep New Mexico Beautiful at $5,280. And then we also put the White Mountain Master Plan in the general fund, and that was one project that was offset by the increase of revenues. So that plan budgeted cost is $108,437.
Judy?
Yes.
On that RMP reimbursement, it says Fort Stanton.
That was the name of one of the fires.
Oh,
But,
okay.
I'm
So
not
it's
sure.
not Fort Stanton,
No.
it was the name of a fire. Okay,
Yes,
'cause it's
actually,
in-
when it came in, I was like, I didn't know there was a fire in Fort Stanton,
Yeah.
but no, it was just one of the fire names, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it was just a little misnomer. And then, of course, transfers out increased. Again, talking about the equipment, we're actually taking the RMP money to the SURF so that it can pile with some of his other auction funds. And then funds to complete Cream Meadows, the budget increased by $128,866. And those funds are going to Fund 218, where the NMDOT grants are being paid out of. Center Street improvements at $200,000, and then additional funds for Village Hall remodel in the amount of $158,991. And then the engineering for Pine Cliff increased by $248,568. As you recall, we had the engineering for Pine Cliff was an original just a geo bond water project, but then the scope was expanded to include streets and sewer for that location in order to go and leverage our funding for CDBG money. So this is the difference to take the original plan design of water and add in roads and sewer to that. So this will bring that design to 100%, and then that money will be leveraged towards the CDBG grant for that project. And then there was a NMDOT grant for Gavilon at $100,000. All those projects are with the corresponding fund will they'll be expended out of are listed in parentheses after each expenditure amount. Any questions on the general fund? Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to SGRT. Attached is we're going to increase this SGRT for the Water Trust Board grant for the Brown Fault Wall project. So you'll see not only a grant component, but you'll also see a loan component. And as discussed prior, we had this project budgeted 100% in SGRT, and we took that funding and leveraged it to the Water Trust Board to receive partial grant and partial loan. So we did receive some grant funding of $500 $101,750. So when that project is done, we will actually turn around and pay off the loan component so that we won't incur any debt with that project. So we were just taking our money, leveraging it to get some state funding to help offset that project, which then frees up additional funds for additional projects within the SGRT.
It's a
Okay.
great plan.
Yeah, it is.
You will also see these corresponding same adjustment amounts in the NMFA, which is later down in the presentation out of Fund 450, so you'll also see it again. The next fund is the SURF, and so their revenues increased by the auction proceeds that they received during the last quarter. Fire received $9,910. The police department were able to sell $10,567. The senior centers sold $79. And the water production department sold $557. So when you see these increases going up, these proceeds will actually increase the amount that the departments will be able to use in order to buy replacement equipment. This fund, the departments do not lose the money if they don't use it in a year, so they're able to save a lot of their auction proceeds year after year in order to save up to, say, maybe buy a vehicle or whatever component, whatever equipment needs they might need. So you'll also see the money coming in from the general fund for the fire department from the RMP. So the next fund is just the fire fund. All this is just adjusting all the figures to the actual fire allotment amount that we received. So the actual grant increased by $57,818. And our expenditures increased by $58,892, and that was just a little bit off because we were rebudgeting some cash amounts too. And then the actual debt service payment, we had originally budgeted it at $90,000, but we only ended up having to pay the $88,000, and that was just a misnomer on the budget. There was just a little bit of error, so we were just adjusting back down to actual. The next fund is the Special Library Fund. They did receive a legislative appropriation in the amount of $10,000 for computer equipment, so they will be expending that amount this next fiscal year. Our next fund is the lodger's tax, and again, actual revenues exceeded budget, so we were able to increase not only revenues, but also to include some of the projects that the Parks and Recs Department will be doing this year. So we increased the tax revenues by $802,840 in order to offset some expenditures for Eagle Creek at $400,000, Grindstone at $97,000, Alto Lake at $191,640. The Midtown benches came in at $19,200, and then the Midtown wayfinding was at $30,000. That was the signs within Midtown to get to certain locations that you're looking for if you didn't know where to go. And then, of course, the last one was the Midtown sound system at $65,000. In gas tax, we increased their budget amounts by $960 for tool allowance and janitorial supplies. Now, this fund is budgeted really close because it's actually offset by a subsidy from the general fund. So I know that's not a big amount, but we had to in order to allocate the expenditures in there. The next fund was the WIBIT, and this is basically just providing the budget for the fiscal year 2021 WIBIT season. We were budgeting revenues and expenditures. Now, the ending amounts in June, these budget amounts will actually be rolled over into the new budget year in order to finish out the season, anything that was left residual. So we had budgeted permits at $7,500, concession at $47,000, admissions to the WIBIT at $65,000 and parking at $63,000. Some of the expenditures were personnel, $40,000, supplies, $6,000, maintenance, $10,000, and merchant fees, $8,000. Do we have any questions on any of those amounts? No? Okay, we'll go on into the intergovernmental grants special revenue fund, and of course, this was the funding for the Cree Middle that came out of the general fund. So it's just a repeat of the money to where we can spend it. The DWI, we were actually adjusting grant expenditures to actual, so we had to decrease the budget by $39. Although he will be actually sending back some monies this year because he wasn't able to spend the full grant down. But we're hoping that we will be able to receive a grant in '22 for the amount that we had to remit back. That was the practice in the current year. We had to remit funding from '20. But we were able to get that grant, that same amount back in '21 to spend. So we're hoping that's going to be the same practice from the DWI fund. But we haven't got full confirmation unless, Chief, you haven't heard either. So hopefully we'll get that money back.
Was that just because of COVID?
I believe he wasn't able to, he was going to try to spend it at the end of the year and get, I think, breathalyzers and some other things, but when he contacted the companies, they weren't able to.
They didn't have chips.
Probably chips or something, or I'm not sure, mouthpieces or something, but they weren't going to be able to ship the amount that he was going to need. So he's going to try to get that in '22, hoping that we're going to get the funds that we remitted back. Hopefully we'll get it in another grant this year, so.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
just stepping back for a minute on the WIBIT, I think I'll have Rodney give a report on this season's proceeds for the WIBIT and for, the whole grindstone. What you're looking at here is really, based on a fiscal year, so it's some revenues from last season mixed with some revenues from this season. So, to give a clean picture of how it's operating this year, I'll have Rodney come into the regular meeting and give a update. We track the seasons and the activity on a spreadsheet on how it's coming in, so that you get a little bit better picture of the operation. We'll have a report at the next council meeting for you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Moving on to the General Capital Improvement Fund, you'll just see the funding from the general fund coming for some of the projects. Again, we've already talked about them. And then the next fund would be the NMFA loan. Again, this is the Water Trust Board loan/grant agreement for the Brown Fault Wall. And then the next one is the GeoBond fund. We were just correcting the actual 2019 GeoBond debt service payments. There was a little bit of a mixed queue on the amount or on the schedule that we were supposed to follow, so we just made that whole. On the RJU, we did increase some of the revenues in order to not only pay the admin fee, but also to get a couple of tablets for field workers. And then on the airport, they were actually approved for an FAA grant for a runway at $600,000. And then, of course, some of their revenues were over actual, so they increased their amounts. I believe it was jet fuel where they exceeded budget. And then on the.
Judy, just 1 second. The purchase of tablets for field workers, $7 million?
18,000.
Middle column.
18,000, yeah. Thank you.
And they have to get those ones that are like tough books. They're more rugged because they're out in the field, and if they drop them in, in water or something, they're not gonna zilch out or anything like that. So
you.
that's why they're a little bit more expensive.
You're right. You are getting old and you are spending too much money. That's word around town.
And then on the treatment plant, it was just the increase for the admin fees. And on the solid waste department, they actually had not only the increase in admin fees, but they had additional vehicle maintenance in the amount of $7,000 and additional yard waste dump fees in the amount of $45,000. And then the final fund was the risk management fund. oh, I forgot to put that in there. It was $600 for safety vets that they were going to buy for the departments. So with that, that's the budget in a nutshell. If you'd like, I can go over any particular fund that you have questions on. If not, I would like to see if somebody can give me a motion for approval.
We've been busy.
Yep.
You've been busy.
Yeah, it's been a crazy 3 weeks.
Well, Mayor, I'll make a motion
Okay,
to approve resolution 2021-35, a resolution amending the fiscal year 2021 budget, quarter ending June 30th, 2021, for certain funds and application to the local government division of the New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration for the approval thereof.
Second.
okay, final discussion? Roll call, please, Ron.
Counselor Eby?
Aye.
Counselor Letterman?
Aye.
Counselor Salas?
Aye.
Counselor Cornelius?
Aye.
Counselor Coughlin?
Aye.
Counselor Jackson?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Mayor, and I think it's just, also it did go to internal
Yes.
finance, so.
Yeah, I did. IFC looked at it. It's been last week sometime. I forgot the day. Item number 3, discussion and possible action on adoption of Resolution 2021-36, a resolution approving the final quarter financial report for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021, an application to the Local Government Division, LGD, of the New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration, DFA, for the approval thereof.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is just a resolution approving the ending fiscal year 30th, 2021, actual cash ending balances. Now, I prepared this report and submit it to DFA each quarter, although the only one that needs to be to council per statute is this final one in order that I reveal what the actual cash balances are so that you can actually see them. This report actually goes through Internal Finance Internal Finance Committee as the budget adjustment each quarter. So what DFA does with this report, it looks at your beginning cash balance and your actuals to date, and it makes sure that you're not overdrawing any of your cash balances in any particular fund. So for our purposes, we're going to focus on column labeled number 8. It's titled Cash and Investments. And if you go down the row for each fund, you'll see that we are reporting all positive balances in each of the funds. And so the total cash and investments that the village had on hand at the end of June was $72,663,018. The general fund ended at $9,702,084. The other fund that I just want to let you know is the FEMA fund, which is labeled as Fund number 309. That balance is slowly going down as we progress through the sewer project line item, sewer line project. And now the ending balance was at $15,503,000. Before it used to be 20-some million. So you can see that we are making progress on that project after so long. So hopefully we'll be able to finish that within my time lifespan, right? I think, was it Counselor Coughlin had said already, right? The kids are already.
Kids that were born the year of that disaster will be eligible to serve on the council by the time it's finished.
Yeah. So they're all the balances are growing. So if you have any particular questions on an individual fund, I can try to answer them. If not, I would need a motion.
Okay. Can I get a motion for item number 3?
I move that we accept and adopt the resolution 2021-36, a resolution approving the final quarter financial report for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021, and application to the Local Government Division, LGD, of the New Mexico Department of Finance and Administration, DFA, for the approval thereof.
Second.
Okay, we had a second by Counselor Eby. Roll call, please, Ron.
Counselor Letterman?
Aye.
Counselor Eby?
Aye.
Counselor Salas?
Aye.
Counselor Cornelius?
Aye.
Counselor Coughlin?
Aye.
Counselor Jackson.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judy, to you and your department. You've done a good job on this, getting it all out in time. Is there any further business?
Mayor, I think, we didn't have the finance report on here, but I think it's important that we point out a few things that we're going to start seeing, especially with the reports, in
Yes.
regards to GRT and then, where we're at on lodger's tax as well.
Right.
So do you want to take that on, Judy, or you want to talk about GRT and the changes?
Tax and Rev? Okay. Tax and Rev is moving to a new software system.
And that's always very pleasant. Yeah.
And what's behind door number 3?
Right? Which one do you want to start with? So, as you know, and Ron can see that, before we used to get a report that labeled out environmental GRT, the infrastructure GRT, and all our other components of our gross receipts tax. Well, now, they're not reporting like that anymore. They're reporting on GRT that went to referendum and then GRT that was just enacted by statute. So now we have to take, in order to make comparisons to prior years, we're massaging some of the numbers, but we're getting there. That's not the problem, but they were actually transitioning at the end of the fiscal year. And so everybody knows that GRT tax is due by the 25th of the month, right, to Tax and Rev. Well, they would keep that reporting period open till the 10th of the following month. So any collections after the 25th through the 10th were still included on your reimbursement for the month. Well, because of the conversion, they actually had to cut off the collection period 10 days earlier. So they ended it at the end of June. So the July distribution is actually short, like around 10 days. So we'll receive those 10 days next month. But going forward, there was another issue that Manager Dodge and.
Just real quick before you move on.
Okay.
So when, this month, when you get your finance report and
Yeah.
you're looking at that, the figure actually came in at $1,200,000 and some $1,000.
Yes.
And that's still higher than previous months and whatnot. It's another high that we had, but it's only representative of 20 days. So it's not comparing apples to apples when you look at that, but we're still performing better than previous. And as we move forward, they're going to be reporting on the 30 or 31 days, whatever it is. But it's this distribution for June is only 2020 days.
So is this a one-time thing, or will this happen for every June?
No, this is a one-time
One
deal.
Okay.
It
Unless
was,
they change again.
Because I know for us, some of the stuff that we have to report, June, we always have to have it in by the 30th, before the end of the month. And how do you know what your full month is when you haven't even had those days yet?
Right.
So I didn't know if they're going to go to that system with Tax and Rev as well.
So July's going to have 10 extra days on it?
No,
No.
no. No, they'll just, moving forward, they basically reported on 20 days, and then moving forward, it's going to be a 30-day report.
So what happens to those missing 10 days?
Yeah, that's what I,
It ends up catching up,
what do you think?
How does it catch up if it's not realized the following month?
I mean,
I thought that'd be a one-time
That'll be
adjustment.
the next lawsuit.
yeah,
That's where I was thinking, just keep it.
yeah, they did the distribution 20 days early. So, next month, they just do a 30-day. They shorted you. They moved it up. We received it 10 days sooner. It actually was 11 days sooner than previous. So,
But are you going to say anything about the GRT minutes that we're getting now on internet destination items?
So, well, why don't you take that one, because I'm not
You want me
too
to
sure.
take it?
Yeah, that one.
Okay, a couple of years ago, and I know Councilor Eby's been following this pretty close, being on the board with the municipal league, but a couple of years ago, Taxation and Revenue entered into an agreement with Amazon, and they started recognizing the revenues coming in, but they're only putting it into the compensating tax. They're only receiving the 5%. And about 2 years ago, they said, okay, we're going to start distributing that, and they're going to phase it in. And what they did last year is they started sending us, our payment was coming out to about $7,500 a month. And that was based upon, what they were receiving, and it was population-based distribution. And so that's how they were doing it. As it phased in, starting this July 1, it ends up, that the agreements that they have are converting over to the whole 8% or whatever the local
Zip code.
options
Zip.
plus the state distribution. So the total gross receipts tax based on destination. And then it depends on whether it's a good or service and how that's recognized as well. But based on destination, when they had negotiated those compensating taxes, the online platforms like Airbnb and VRBO, Avalar, or, some of those other third-party platforms, as those platforms are collecting the gross receipts tax, they're sending it into the state, and then the state was recognizing it as a compensating tax, and they're keeping the whole thing. Now, we're gonna start receiving that as part of our distribution as well.
In July.
Yeah, in July, it started July, the collection, but it's not remitted to us. We won't recognize that till September because of that 2-month lag. So the compensating tax on online purchases goes away, and that $7,500 goes away, but we go to the destination. And, I'm estimating that we should see on an annual basis, right about $1 million increase just from that activity. So, we're gonna watch it. It's not too clear to us on how they're gonna be reporting that, but we're gonna try to figure that out to make sure we're getting our fair share.
And I'll try to, if we can figure it out, I'll start putting it on the monthly report. And I know the mayor and Tim had asked me to put any other anomalies on the key items each month that we notice in order to see any changes and stuff. So you'll be seeing that new for the July report that comes out in August.
But I thought there was discussion about our tax system is not based on product destination in the state of New Mexico, but now we're going to have two different taxing situations within the
No, I
state?
think they switched it to destination just with the internet and federal.
Just for internet. But all the other stuff is not destination.
It was origination and now it's destination.
Destination, but it's,
On online purchases.
Online purchases.
Just online.
Just on online. Okay,
Yes.
going back to the June and July thing. Okay, so we're getting 20 days of June, and then when we get our reporting for July, we're going to get July 1st through July 31st, right?
Yes.
July 1st, yeah.
Through July 31st. But we still don't know when we get June 21st through June 30th.
that's the secret sauce.
Through the 10th. Wasn't it? They were collecting through the 10th of the next month.
The collections and distributions are two different things. The state collects it, and then when they distribute to us, they're two different dates.
Okay. So I'm confused, and we said we're going to be short 10 days in distribution?
Yes.
Yes.
So then when does that distribution for those 10 days that were short get made?
I think it's going to be on the August, but I'm not 100% sure.
And this is where the anomalies or lack of will start catching real quick. And instead of doing like we did with GRT for years, complaining, we're going to have to really stand up and start working with our other municipalities. Are you experiencing the same thing? Because I'm sure we will.
So let me try to explain it like this. Previously, they were reporting, and I'll go to June. June, was the distribution days represented 30 days or 31 days or whatever, 30 days, right, for June. Okay, so then in July, and that was, right about the 15th, 16th is when they would usually do that distribution. So now what they've done is they've moved it back to like the 4th or 5th of July, whenever it was. That represented 20 days.
Move it up.
Yeah, they moved it up.
Moved it up, not moved it back to the next month. Are they
Correct.
moving it back forward to the next month?
Okay,
I'm getting
so-
caught up.
Okay, so the last distribution represented The distribution went from the 15th of June till July. Okay, let me back up. It went from May 15th or 16th to June 15th or 16th. Okay, and that, so basically a 30-day period. And in July, the distribution represented from June 15th till July 5th, so they represented 20 days. The August payment will represent 30, because you got 31 days, it'll represent 31 days. So it'll basically go from July 4th till June 4th or 5th or whatever that day is. So moving forward, all the other distributions are going to represent 30 or 31 days.
Okay,
But we'd already collected that money when they're going to the 15th. We got it the month before, so we're not losing out on any money.
Correct.
The
okay.
timing.
So distribution is tied to a period of time, not a calendar month. Because we always talk about our June distribution or July distribution, and I always thought it was like for the revenues for that month, but it's really,
2 months in advance.
but it's for 30 or 31 days, but it doesn't start on necessarily on the first. It can start whenever and just go 30 or 31 days.
Yeah, and those distributions represent a 2-month lag.
Correct, right.
Yeah.
Because it takes them a long time to
Distribution,
get their
that's why I say the
abacus.
distribution and collection are two different things.
Right, right. I don't really care about the collection, that's their problem. I'm more concerned about us getting our fair share of the money, but okay, that explains it, because I always thought it was for, we got a distribution 2 months later for the month of July, but it's not. It's sometime in July to sometime either back in June or sometime.
Yeah.
It should be closer to the month
It's
now.
kind,
There's
it's
only
kind of
4
like
days.
businesses that have 13 calendar months.
Yes,
Yeah,
very similar.
yeah, got it.
Yeah. But it's important to realize that lag as well when you're analyzing it to see, how the
Right.
market's doing in the industry. So that you see that trending and you recognize that activity is a 2-month lag.
But the real cool thing is that it's our collection is even over what the high had been ever.
Right.
So we're operating very strongly.
Just imagine
Hot.
if we had a fully employed workforce.
And as long as the employees don't crater that everybody has working right now, because that's the issue that we're having is people are just getting tired, overworked.
So when we do the reporting and, on Judy's report, I think we need to recognize that somehow. When we do a comparison, we say, okay, in comparison to last year, June's report is 10% over. I'm just throwing out a number. But if it's 10% over, but it only represents 20 days, that's not an apple-to-apple comparison.
Got it.
Clear as mud?
I'm glad that you're figuring out how to compare this. So instead of apples and oranges, we're going to be talking about nectarines. Got it.
Yep.
Historic information.
Pureed nectarines.
Because all the adjustments that had, normally when you go and you try to track, and look at how the industry was doing before, that correlation really isn't there because there's been too many changes.
Right.
So, it's never going to be an apple-to-apple comparison. You had the correction that happened with the taxpayers that, weren't being, we assume it was a local grocery store that wasn't being reported correctly, where you had that big distribution 2 Octobers ago. So, that's one deal. And then the reoccurring revenue coming in as a result of that, is another thing that throws that off. And then you got the compensating tax deal that's also changed that. And then the phase out of the whole harmless. So there's several different issues that have changed, the way that we're receiving revenue.
So, and did you include the TRD, the new decision on the way they're operating, changing, and then we haven't settled on the distribution yet, but.
We haven't received any information back on that, so the counteroffer stands at, where it was previously that we discussed.
53 million or
Yes.
53 million total, and then we have our percentage, which is smoke and mirrors, so we're still looking at that. Could you touch briefly, just since it's relevant with COVID, what our village policy is for employees and whatnot we're still operating under? Because people are getting confused.
Mayor, the position that we've taken is that we're going to be following the CDC guidelines in any public health orders that come out. And, you know. I
For
know that-
employees. And there's no medical science, there's none of this science, it's political science. So we're already getting communicated to that from businesses and people that haven't been vaccinated and have been vaccinated, that, that they're already pushing back on the mask mandates, and they're not going to close down, they're not going to do any of this. So we'll just have to wait and see how it is. But again, I think our position has been, if you're vaccinated, that's great. If you're not, you ought to think about it. And if you haven't, then you probably should wear a mask.
Yes, and I think a burial plan would be good too.
Yeah, just wake it up. But the point is that we're getting hints. We're forecasting from political figures in Washington, D.C., and a little bit from the state that you better get ready. And then you see what the teachers' unions have done nationally. They just gave, the one in California just gave the governor that they're trying to recall $2 million for his campaign because they haven't been working in over a year and they don't want to work for another year. And so we're hearing all these different people that it has nothing to do with science, medical science. It seems to be. So the message I think still should be, if you're worried about it or you're in that age bracket or whatever, you need to be sure and take care of yourself. So if we have an employee that tests positive, what's the protocols?
If they test positive, they stay.
Or if they've been around someone that tests positive.
That's
If
changing.
they've been around somebody that tests positive, they need to contact the HR department. The HR department has a protocol that they go through with them.
Do you know what that is right now? Because I've gotten muddled in
Off the top
it.
of my head, no, but they need to contact Cheryl. She'll go through a questionnaire with them.
Okay.
And if they meet the current guidelines of a direct contact, it has to be a certain period of time, certain proximity, then she'll determine whether that is in accordance with our policy considered a direct contact.
Okay. Because I just want to make sure everyone's, that they may end up testing positive even if they've had the vaccine.
So, yeah, that's what we are seeing, is that some people that have had the vaccine and have been sick are testing positive.
Yeah.
So I think everybody needs to take, some personal protection and, take care of themselves and be cautious no matter what, because there's all kinds of different variations of what's occurring out there. And I think at some point in time, people just need to start taking it into their own hands and doing what they need to
Absolutely.
do to protect themselves.
I think that
But in regards to as an employee-employer, relation, please contact the HR department to get proper guidance from our HR manager.
Mr. Mayor, I think the penetration has been variously estimated of the Delta variant between 60 and 80% in our state. I can't speak to any others. And so that might be the reason for the breakthrough. However, the clinical side of it is that those who have had the vaccine and who have become infected secondarily to this variant have very mild cases and have not required to date any admission to the hospital. And I've had two numbers from the reservation, 15 up to 30, and none of those that were vaccinated required hospitalization. And we've seen that also with our own hospital. So the take home is get vaccinated and forget about the mask. I mean, unless you're wearing an N95 30 minutes after you put that thing on, it's just window dressing. I mean, the moisture from your own breathing penetrates the fabric, and that's what makes it another port of entry. So, social distancing, I see people doing that in places in the grocery store, certainly at Walgreens, other places where they're just respectful of it, and our pharmacies too, so.
Look, the facts are, is when we first got into this, none of us had been in a pandemic, and we were still finding our way, trying to find our information sources, trusting, the CDC and the rest of the ones, the World Health Order to a certain point. But we've been down this road already, and we've seen how these things are working and not working. So I think we're on different footing now, that we can still look at the data, the information, and operate safely. But again, I just want to educate businesses. Some people hadn't even heard it's coming around again. They were wondering why people are wearing masks voluntarily, and that's what I appreciate is with liberty comes responsibility, and they're taking responsibility. So,
So should we wear our masks even though we are vaccinated?
no.
No,
Okay.
there's no hard evidence that, for all the reasons I just gave, that's really going to be effective.
But that's the recommendation coming out.
Exactly, they
Yes.
just put that on.
Yeah, yeah.
And I thought I heard, or a statement of the governor that it's just recommended.
Yeah,
Right,
right now it's
It's just
recommended.
all recommended.
because they want to avoid pitchforks and fires.
Yeah, that's the whole point, is that she's starting to look at reelection now, and the tide is turning a little bit.
Yeah.
So she hasn't mandated,
No, it's
No.
Yet.
recommended.
okay,
And then-
even though Lincoln County is in the orange
Orange.
instead of red.
Right.
So we are up there, I think we had almost 30 in a week, 30
Yeah,
cases.
something like that.
Something like that. And then when it comes to the schools, elementary schools, regardless of vaccination status,
Still have to.
staff still have to wear it. Once you get to middle school and above, if you've had a vaccination, you don't have to wear a
But
mask.
you know, schools, there's going to be schools that say, we're going to go ahead and you have to wear
Well, that's where the PED comes in, and then that's where our local school board needs to
Yeah,
be active.
absolutely.
And I think too, as a corollary to that, Pfizer now has, and I think they will get an emergency waiver to distribute their vaccine to those that are 12 or older. I understand that in the pipeline, there's another one at age 5 and older. That's not out yet, but, so that will also help with your middle school. But my real concern is this: I want them back in school. I want the socialization and the education. I don't want, to have a society of trolls. And the other thing is, I want them to be involved with the athletic activities.
Yes.
It's a big part of it. So, you can't have them wearing masks to play basketball or soccer. Well, soccer's different, it's outside, it won't. But I'm just saying, some people are getting carried away. They're thinking that the mask is a good thing in lieu of a vaccination. And I'm saying that's a very, very bad way to think about it. There's no science with that at all. And you're right. Right now, it is political science. The other thing is an aside, which I thought was very interesting. The former director of the FDA, which of course is going to oversee verification of these vaccines and giving them full licensure as safe, is now sitting on the board of Pfizer.
Oh, my gosh, yeah, there you go.
Now, I don't see that as a conflict, but it could be a great endorsement for Pfizer's
Oh, yeah.
vaccine.
I don't know, I just know that PTSD is kicking in already. And having gone through this before, and it's starting up again with schools coming and now these new guidelines and everything, I'm just going
Well,
crazy.
and you see it, people have developed patience, but I see their fuses are much shorter.
Yeah, I mean, regardless, if you don't want to get the vaccine, I think you should, you should consider it. But if you don't want to get it, I'm not going to call you names and,
No.
the one comment that I see a lot is sheep. And I just remind people that sheep live on both sides of the fence.
Yeah.
So just be respectful of everybody, regardless of whatever your views are, so.
Right.
They're caught in although I would never endorse what the CDC is doing, but they are caught in the middle, because just because you say you've had the vaccine doesn't mean you've had it.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
And so in public transportation, I think it still should be continued as ineffective as it is. It's better than nothing, because I don't know how, we don't have a registration that people can go to and say issue, like you can your TT or your travel number, that puts you in the fast lane and all of that. Well, that's recorded, and it's a registry, and we really don't have anything effectively. And those cards I gave you, I think I could print some up myself.
Sure.
Not that I would, but I'm just saying.
Couple of bucks a piece.
Yeah, really, and put some numbers in there, but I'm just saying, there's no real way to verify and validate. And so on the safe side of that, everybody gets a mask whether you've been vaccinated or not. And then you had the Delta variant, so we can use that as a crutch, so there you have it.
Okay. All right, so,
Back when we were getting tested multiple times.
yes.
Playing the game.
You'd said that they were going to ask you for payment or insurance or something. And I got a deal from Medicare the other day where they had billed Medicare $250 for that test. Medicare declined to pay, but
Yep.
that was interesting with really no information. I didn't give them a Medicare number.
They just looked at you and figured you're on there.
This is true.
That's what they do with me.
Speak up.
No,
Okay.
I got it from Blue Cross, the same thing.
Yeah, I didn't give them the Blue Cross number. I didn't want our rates to go up.
All right, since that's the end of our conclusion of the special council session, no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Go.